this with my team. Please share it with your team. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everyone. Welcome to Understanding Accessibility. Also, welcome to Accessibility First Solutions premiere event. This is our first event. We're going to start hosting events like this on a monthly basis of just informational things that we want to send and talk to people about and be able to use this as a learning method for everyone. So other thing is, if you'll see my email at the end of the presentation or the end of the time we have together here, if you ever come up on a topic and you're saying, Michael, Tim, this would really help me, it would help my team if we did a webinar, a quick webinar for this. I want you to feel comfortable to send that to us because that's what our job is. That's what our job. We want to use this and just help expend the knowledge. I'm going to turn my camera on real quick during introductions. I won't necessarily have it on every moment of the day. I'll tell you why here when Tim gets his screen reader turned on, why I don't do it, because I have a tendency to act weird when Tim's doing screen reader stuff. But before we get into the content, what I'd like to do is I will have Tim introduce himself. So Tim, would you like to introduce yourself to the crowd today?
Sure. My name is Tim Harshbarger, and I've been doing accessibility for a very long time. Actually, for almost 30 years now. I am a screen reader user. I've actually, and this is part of the reason I'm here today is because I'm a screen reader reader. So I've been considered legally blind most of my life. So I used magnification for a while, and then a magnification of screen reader. And then a few years back, about 10 years back, I lost the remainder of my sight. So I'm totally blind and I use a screen reader full time. So I'm quite, I guess, adept at using screen readers. And of course, do a lot of accessibility consulting work and helping project teams understand disability and accessibility. And honestly, I don't have my camera on, but if you've looked at my LinkedIn post recently, you'll know why. Because if I turn my camera on, you don't know what you'll be seeing. In fact, someone asked me, I turned on my camera recently, and they said, "We're looking at your ceiling fan."
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that's
totally,
how
totally.
it works.
Well, and honestly, so I was telling somebody this story earlier today, Tim. The ironic thing about it is, so Tim and I have worked together going on 6 years now. We've worked for the same company for a little while, doing similar roles. And a lot of times, Tim, right? You don't even have your laptop open. You have your lid closed
That
because
is
it's not
true.
like you need the screen even. So it's kind of ironic, and it really changed my way of thinking of I've got four screens sitting in front of me. Yeah, Tim, a lot of times will work even with the laptop lid short or in the other room, in the opposite room from the
Yeah,
laptop, because he doesn't need it necessarily sitting in front of him to do particular work.
yeah. As long
Um,
as I can hear it and I can type on it, I'm good. So thanks to wireless keyboards, that's just about anywhere.
right, right. And so that is something from that. All right, so you're not going to hear the one of our other team members talk. In fact, I'm going to possibly make you a little ill as I move my camera and put it back. But I also want to just point out for those who've been on Accessibility First Solutions website today, also we do have, because she attends it, our Chief Happiness Officer, Liliana. She's laying in the chair next to me, so she is here for the webinar. She won't be presenting today, but she is, Tim will tell you, Lily is at most of our meetings. In fact, she often wants a seat at the table, right, Tim? She looks for me to pull a chair out so she can sit and be at our meetings. So our chief
Yes,
our
I
chief
gather she will
happiness
give you a
officer.
rather nasty look if you do
Yep.
not pull the
Right.
chair out so
Our
she can
our
join us
chief
at the
chief
table.
happiness officer takes accessibility seriously, and she tries to attend every meeting we've got. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Harshbarger. I am founder and principal consultant here for Accessibility First Solutions. Tim and I made a decision back in April to start the company. We had worked in the accessibility. I had worked in the accessibility arena for 5 years prior to that. Tim actually has worked, we determined the other day that 28, 29 years, 29, almost 29 years. This November be
Actually,
29.
no, 30 this year.
30. Okay, 30 this
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
So
in
30
just a month or
years
two.
in the accessibility industry. So you can see he's been my mentor as well as my older brother. I've learned a lot from him. So we decided after we left that company that we still wanted to do what we were doing, which is training and learning and teaching and really talking about accessibility. So we decided to start Accessibility Solutions. And like I said, today is our premiere event, and we'll have events like this coming up throughout the year to teach people more. Also about myself, prior to going to work for the company, which was DQ, I worked 22 years for State Farm Insurance. Tim also worked for State Farm Insurance. We're both based out of Bloomington, Illinois. A lot of us told you where you were. We're based out of Bloomington, Illinois. If you ever get a trivia contest, it's Bloomington, Illinois is the corporate headquarters of State Farm Insurance. And for those who are out of the United States, State Farm Insurance is just a large insurer here in the States. They insure most cars and homes. So a large insurer. And also for those who are not in the States, Bloomington is about 2.5 hours of south of Chicago, which you probably have heard of Chicago. So that's where we're located in the States. All right, so let's talk a little bit about accessibility and what the first thing I want to do before we get into Tim's screen reader demonstration is define digital accessibility and what we mean by defining what we mean when we talk about digital accessibility. So when Tim and I talk about digital accessibilities, what we're talking about is the fact that individuals with disabilities can use digital content independently. And the key word of that definition is independently, right? Because a lot of times somebody might say, well, you know what? If you have someone sitting with you, you can get to this page, or you have other means. You get a phone number that you can call. But that's not our focus. Our focus is basically making sure that this means this digital media totally is affected by being able to reach out and just use it when you want to. The story I often tell is a pre-COVID, post-COVID story that involves Tim and I, and it talks about grocery shopping. So prior to COVID, our town is about 120,000 people. There was only one grocery store in town who actually had online ordering. Ironically, it was the most expensive grocery store in town, and they offered pretty limited selections. And so what Tim would have to do is couldn't really go online and order groceries. And so he'd have to give me a call. And he'd have to say, hey, Michael, I need to go grocery shopping. And I'd go, yep, okay. I can do it at this time, and we'll go grocery shopping. And Tim would be great. Okay. But what happened as soon as he said that, that meant he had to clear his schedule and make sure that he was available on my schedule, kind of situation. And also the fact that he had a limited time to do it. So he'd create a grocery list and we'd go to the grocery store. Now, I realized this after the fact. Probably should have been a better shopper for him during the fact. But what would usually happen is Tim would say, hey, I need mustard. And we'd go down the mustard aisle, and I would probably 90% of the time pick out a thing of mustard and throw it in his cart. Didn't know what brand he was getting, just knew he was getting mustard. If there was different selections, I might tell him a couple of them, but I wouldn't sit there and stand in front of the shelf and tell him about all the different mustard. And so he was very dependent on me to do his grocery shopping, which I think if I was him would be very frustrating, because the fact is he didn't really have a big selection. He really didn't have a lot of time. He really was based on my schedule on doing things. Well, post COVID, now every grocery store in our town has online ordering, and Tim gets to select what store he goes to, what products he gets. He gets to make those choices of when they get delivered. And so Tim does that, right? He decides when he needs things, what he wants, and the fact if he forgot something in the old days, he'd wait for me to come back around so he could get it. where now he can just get back online and start shopping again. Independence is something I know I take for granted, especially when it comes to something simple as grocery shopping. That I learned very quickly how frustrating it can be for somebody else. Now, I bring up grocery shopping as an easy example, but we also have examples for Tim and I of financial transactions where Tim's needed my help to read through documentation for him. In fact, one time he refinanced his home and the documentation was not accessible. So I had to go over to his house and read it to him. My brother and I, if you get to hang out with us at all, you're going to find out that we have a pretty close relationship. We live pretty close together, actually about a half mile from one another, where we can walk to each other's house, and we spend a lot of time together. In fact, Tim and I will tell you we probably talk at least once a day. But here was the thing about the financial transaction. One of the things I had to do was actually read a read a statement that confirmed his income. So even though Tim might want to keep how much he makes a year a secret from me, I know I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable sharing that with everyone. He didn't have a choice because he couldn't do it independently. And that's one of the other things that we talk about many times to people in business, in education, in financial businesses, et cetera, is think about all that data that you would like people to be able to keep confidential. And can they, depending on how accessible the site is, right? Accessible the site is. The other thing that I like to talk about when we talk about digital accessibility is the web content accessibility guidelines, which what we base a lot of our audits, et cetera, on, have these four principles, and they're called POUR principles, POUR principles. I will say you might hear eventually, right, of the web content accessibility guidelines success criteria. I like to talk about it at this level because honestly, if you can think about these four questions, you can get to a lot of the accessibility guidelines themselves. And those are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. That's how we spell out poor: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And honestly, the way that the question goes is if I have something on a web page or a mobile device or I'm in a document, I say to myself, can I get this information in different ways? Meaning, can I see it? And if I can't see it, can I hear it? An example of that would be an image, right? Let's say I have an image in this presentation and I share it with Tim. There is something referred to as alternative text, which is basically I describe the image in text. Well, for Tim, he can't see the image, but now because I put the alternative text in, he can hear the image. The same thing might be for captions. We've used captions. A lot of us use captions. I know I use captions. If I can't hear what's going on in the TV show or a movie, I can turn on captions now and see what's going on in the movie or what's being said or heard on the movie or TV show. By the way, another cool part that you can also do is a lot of the streaming services, Netflix, Disney, Peacock, Paramount, also have something called audio description, AD, which is if you can't see what's going on with the movie, can someone describe the action to you? And it fits within the pauses of the movie. And I know Tim has watched a lot of the shows that he's watched in the past with audio description on, and he's commented about how different a feeling it is now that he can hear some of the action that he couldn't see previously in that particular item. Operable, can I interact using something more than a mouse? Example is a keyboard. Can I go ahead and interact with that? Because some people can't use the mouse. In fact, Tim, not being able to see his screen, doesn't interact with the mouse. He interacts with his keyboard. Now, he also interacts with his screen reader, which he'll talk to us. He can get to things different ways through a screen reader. But it's the question is, do I only have the mouse as a way to interact? Understandable. Do I know where to go or what to do next? So this is really about making sure that the interface I'm looking at, I can orientate myself, right? Can I have the right navigation? Do I know where to go with navigation? Do I understand the sections of the page? Do I understand what's grouped together? Do I understand the form and what you want me to fill out, right? So do I know where to go or what I want to need to do next? And then finally, robust. Robust is different than the first three, perceivable, operable, and understandable. A lot of times when we talk about perceivable, operable, and understandable, you noticed all those questions dealt with what? The customer, right? The person using that interface. And so we talk a lot about people with those first three. The last one, I have a tendency to get a little geeky and talk about code. And so robust is really, am I using coding practices that will future proof my work? And one way that I do that, right, is I just use the coding, the regular coding practices that are out there, the best practices of the coding community. And that helps me out a great deal with robust. So if you remember these four, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, they will take you forward towards digital accessibility. Any questions what we've talked about so far? All right, so I'm going to transition here. I'm going to turn it over to Tim, but there's three rules as Tim will be running us through the screen reader. So in a while here, we're going to go ahead and switch screens. I'll turn off mine because if I don't, and Tim's tries to click on something and he's struggling with it, if I had my video left on it, you all would start laughing because I start using body English where you'll see my head go over one section or another trying to get him to click on something. And so I don't like doing that because it turns out to be more comedy than informational. But even though I have my screen off, I'm going to be watching the chat. So here is a couple rules for why Tim is using his screen reader. Rule number one, you need to ask questions. So if Tim is doing something and you have a question, you have a couple ways of getting to it. You can go to the chat, which if you haven't opened it before, not by now, there's two bubbles there on your command bar in Zoom. You open it up, I'll be watching it. And when I see your question, I will interrupt Tim when it makes sense and ask that question to Tim. If he's right in the middle of something that makes sense, he answers it right then, I'll get that taken care of. Or you're welcome to turn on your mic and say, "Hey, Tim, I've got a question," and Tim will pause and he'll answer that question. So rule number one is make sure you ask questions. Rule number two is ask questions. Rule number one and rule number two are the same because I really want you to ask questions. That's how we all learn. You might not have been able to see someone do a screen reader before. I don't want you to hesitate asking questions. Yeah, there is a third rule, Stephanie. And I think I know you're going to try to guess that third rule kind of situation. So ask the questions. I don't want anybody to hesitate and think, oh, I shouldn't ask this question. This is a silly question. No, it is not. The benefit I have over you is being his brother. I've gotten to ask those questions. So I don't get to ask, I don't ask them anymore, but I want you to ask them. The third rule. You ready, Stephanie? Because you probably guessed my third rule. The third rule is you need to sit up straight and don't slump in your chair. Your mother wanted me to tell you that and while you're watching the demo is to make sure you sit up straight and have good posture. That's the third rule. It's not my rule. It's not my rule. It's my mom's rule, and I can sit up straight and make sure I've got it. All right, so I am going to switch over. I'm going to stop screen share and turn off my video, and I'm going to let the star of the show come on. Tim, I'll tell you what. And I know we've got a couple people from outside the United States, but Walmart is a big department store chain in the US where we can buy all of our groceries and all of our things that we need, all of our knickknacks. Tim, let's say you were looking for a new keyboard because I know Walmart has keyboards. Would you mind showing us what process you would go through on Walmart to maybe find a keyboard and get it delivered to your house?
Sure, just a second here. Let me make sure I have it up. Okay.
Now, I'm going to caveat for everybody here. Tim's going to turn on a screen reader. And if I'm not mistaken, Tim, you haven't done this yet. So this will be a learning experience for you as well as us. Because one thing that we don't like to do is Tim to practice some of these things. So he knew where I was going to ask him to go. I don't know 100% if he knew what I was going to ask him to do, but this is going to be new for all of us at the same time. Ready? Still trying?
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm setting up with the screen reader, so I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. Well, actually, so I have used incognito mode because I don't remember. I may have signed into. I might have had a setup account on Walmart like a couple of years ago or something.
Now it still says sign into account, so you're not signed in on this one either.
Yeah, well, that that's why I use incognito because it's like if I have a cookie on here or something
Yep.
like that, I didn't want it. It's just like,
And let you know, I can see your screen reader, but I can't hear it.
okay, well, let me change something here. Let's see. I'm gonna change where the screen reader speech is coming from. So let's switch to that. See?
No.
Oh, I just lost speech. Okay. Just a second here. I lost speech altogether.
That's not good. This is the benefit of live demos, right?
The screen reader, yes. Okay, let's try this again. Can you hear it?
I cannot.
Okay. You didn't hear it before, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so let me try this again. Okay, let's do that.
Screen sharing meeting controls window.
Perfect. Can hear it.
Screen sharing meeting controls.
Okay. Evidently it saves that setting, and so when I went to check the box again, I evidently unchecked it when I shared. So
Walmart R save money dot.
Okay.
Live better dot. Dash Google Chrome. System menu. Walmart R save link.
okay. So here I am at Walmart. So a few things. There is a window at the bottom that's going to put the speech up on the screen. I've got it set right now to the speed I would normally listen to it. You're hearing the voice I normally listen to, which is more of a robotic voice. And so at the bottom, you'll see the text, whatever the screen reader is saying, it's going to be down there at the bottom to help you out a little bit.
The screen reader viewport's not open, just to let you know.
Oh, that's right, because I just had to reset everything.
NVDA preferences submenu. Tool submit view log L. Speech viewer S.
Good thing you mentioned
Walmart
it.
R save money dot. Live better dot. Document. Link.
Okay.
Link. Walmart R save money dot. Live better dot.
So I
Dash Google
just
Chrome left parent.
so one of the things I did is I just checked the title. You heard that.
Walmart R save money dot. Live better dot. Dash
So it
Google
tells
Chrome
me
left
I'm in
parent.
the
Configure like
Walmart
parent.
site. And as you could tell, I'm using Chrome currently. Now what's going to happen is the one thing to make sure you understand is you're looking at the screen, right? And you can see what's going on. Mike mentioned something about a sign on, so sign in form, things like that. Know that I don't have any clue what's on here, right? I assume this is for, I haven't, if I probably have used Walmart at some point, but it's been such a long time since I've looked at that site that I don't know what's on here. Now, I've used enough websites. I assume there's probably some kind of search facility on there that might let me search the site. I'm sure there's some type of site navigation and a banner and a footer, because that seems to be fairly common with sites, though, honestly, what's in the footer or what's in the banner sometime, or the header of the page is not necessarily always the same. I know there'll be a link to the home page somewhere in the header, right? The main content of the page, I really have no idea what's it. So for me, as far as it goes, this page is blank, right? Mentally, when I'm envisioning this page, I don't envision anything. So I'm going to start by exploring this page because Mike's told me to look for keyboard.
Link.
So I'm going up here.
Link.
And so the first thing it says is link. You heard that, it says link. Notice that it just said link. So one thing the screen reader will do for me as I'm walking through is it identifies what I'm looking at. So if it's a link, or it's a heading, it's a list, it does that. And then it tells me what the name of that is, but there is no name for this thing. So it just says link. So all I know is this is a link that will go somewhere. Now, maybe it's a skip link. It's at the top of the page. You may not be able to see it at this point. You should be able to see where the screen reader is reading because it should highlight that part of the screen. But to me, it's just link. So I'm not too used to it.
Link skip to main content.
Oh, there's a link to skip. Link to skip. Link that says skip to main content.
Banner landmark link Walmart comic.
And then it says a banner, which tells me I'm at the top of the page, and it said home page, which is again, this is when the screen reader says it's. I know it means home page, but sometimes the screen reader pronounces things oddly. And honestly, most of the time for a screen reader user, you either spell it out if you don't know what it means, or don't understand what it's saying, or you get used to it. Like this case, I know it means home page, and so I just keep going. Honestly, if it really bothers me, I have a way to go in my dictionary and change that.
How do you want your items question? Region button collapsed unlabeled graphic dot. To get missing image descriptions, comma. Open the context menu dot.
So there I read a lot of stuff about how do I want to get my items. It said missing image. That's something that Chrome does if the image is missing in alt text, and it's expandable.
Button collapsed. How do you want your items question? Normal comma. 61,761 bullet normal super center.
So it does have my it has, yeah, it says normal. So
Button collapsed. How do you want your items question? Normal comma. 61,761 bullet normal super center.
it's been a long time since I've used this site, since if it's saying my zip code is 01, I haven't lived in that zip code for a while.
Out of region Walmart site dash wide search landmark search.
Unless it's something they
Walmart.
picked up from the IP.
So Tim, one of the things that I want to actually, there's two questions. One of the
Yeah.
things I want to mention, notice that the zip code said 61,761. I know one of the questions we get is, if that read it wrong, how do I make the screen reader read it right for you? And can you talk through us about when things get read wrong?
Yeah,
how that'll
that's what I was
affect
just
your-
mentioning with the homepage. It's just that the fact is I know it pronounces things weird, and I get either it's something you stop because the screen reader, for instance.
Search edit as autocomplete open. How do you want your items question? Region button collapsed. How do you want your items question? Normal comma. 61,000. Do you want your
I say I can go by word.
items question? Normal comma.
It says normal.
61,761 bullet normal.
And so I could go 6.
1 6 1 7 6 1 bullet.
So there, right?
1.
Yep.
I could have it go. So if I don't know what it is, I can actually always spell it out. If I know what it is, then I'll just leave it as is. Now, occasionally, if I don't really like the pronunciation and it really bothers me, then I can go into a dictionary and change that pronunciation completely. So now with numbers, I can control somehow how it reads numbers. I can have it choose it as a whole number or read digit by digit or read in pairs. So it reads pairs of digits at a time. I just usually leave it this way. Because the screen reader is not smart enough necessarily to switch every single time how it's going to pronounce. It can tell a difference between a date format and a number format, so it might do some differences there. But there's a lot of number formats where it just reads out the number and then you figure it out or spell it out, or it reads it the way you want it to. So
Yep, we got a couple more questions, but I'll ask one more question and then we'll let you go a little step further before I ask
Sure.
Stephanie and Danielle's question, and that's Vanessa's question. And you can tell Vanessa and I are friends because I didn't ask you this question on purpose to see if someone would ask this question, and Vanessa helped me perfectly with it. And that is, it's talking so fast. How the heck do you follow along with it?
So when I first started using a screen reader, which has been a long time ago, I remember, in fact, what happened is I was getting, at the job I worked at, they were getting me a screen reader, but it was going to take like a week before we got that, they had to ship the software and stuff, all this stuff. and get it installed and things like that. So I had someone else I knew, another person who is blind, and he said, if you want to practice on a screen reader, you can come down to my desk at the end of the day, because I'll be leaving work, and you can practice for a while after, because I usually would stay a little bit later. And so I would go down, and the first thing I always had to do is change the speed way down, because I wasn't very used to it. And over time, you get used to how it pronounces things, and you can speed it up a little more and a little more and a little more, and you get faster and faster. To be honest, I am by no means the person who's fastest at a screen reader. I've heard other people who listen to screen readers even faster than this, and they can understand it. Now, I'll tell you, there's sometimes when I'm some content, I will slow down the screen reader, my screen reader a bit. If it's extremely technical content that I am not used to reading, I will frequently slow that down, because I'm still trying to understand what's going on in there, not just listen to it and immediately understand. So it takes some time to get used to it, and over time, you get used to how it speaks. You get used to the way it pronounces words, and you can get used to listening it to faster and faster.
Well, in fact, Vanessa, that's so two things on that too. Tim, often we joke around about this. He talks about the fact the speed he listens to his screen reader at is the screen of business. Because imagine if he had to listen to it really slow, he'd never get anything done, right? He'd spend most of the time reading pages and not necessarily getting it done. The other thing I want to mention, and this is something that was a mind shift for me. So I have a daughter, Grace. She's 25. She's a paralegal. She has ADHD and dyslexic, and she's profound dyslexic. And one of the things that her uncle Tim encouraged her to do was to learn a little bit about screen readers. Well, as a paralegal, she has to read very complex documents sometimes. And because the screen reader can read it so much faster than her, a lot of times she'll just turn a screen reader on and listen to what's going on the document in the screen reader because of the fact that it can read it so fast. And she'll say with her dyslexia, she could read the document, it would just take her a while to get through it, right? And so the fact that she's gotten comfortable with the screen reader, it took some time, is helped her in the fact that she knows when speed is of the essence, right? She can turn on a screen reader and have it read to her really quick and get through that document in half the time it would take her to sit down and read it. And so she was one of those individuals, again, that made me think differently. Because if you would have said before Grace did this, hey, who uses a screen reader? Of course, with all my experience with Tim, I would have told you somebody who's blind. Now, if you ask me who uses screen readers, I tell you somebody because a lot of different people use screen readers. All right, Tim, I'll let you go on and we'll get Stephanie and Daniel's question in here in a
Okay,
second.
so right now I've been reading through this, but I'm going to go back to the top of the page, because I just want to give you an idea here initially how a screen reader reads.
Out of region link. Link.
So I basically, using my keys, so I use Control Home, it sets the screen reader's reading back all the way to the top of the page.
Link.
So we're back to that link that just says link. So now what I can do, what I normally do on a page like this, if I want to get a good idea of what's going on with the page, or I want to look around and see if there's anything like, for instance, I know on sites like Walmart and other places, they may have sales or something like that, right? And again, since I've never been here before, I might go quickly through the page, and then I'll jump by heading. So
Main landmark Walmart bar save money dot. Live better dot. Heading level 1.
so there it said heading level 1. It told me Walmart save money. So there's a heading level 1. And I'm jumping through this by heading levels, because often heading levels are a good way to mark up major sections on the page, beyond that are a little more focused than like using landmarks. So
Brands for you heading level 2.
brands for me. So it's going to talk about brands here.
No next heading.
And then that's it.
Walmart advertisement proving sample from container proving link shop now comma. Put message to
And
the
I
text
want
comma.
to actually read the next item after brands.
Out of proving sponsored. Walmart advertisement proving sample from container proving out of proving sponsored.
Okay, so I know that there doesn't seem like anything obvious that I'm interested on the main page. So I'm going to go up to the header,
Link skip the main content.
because I'm assuming that up here, I'm going to just search. That's what I'm going to do, because I want
Banner landmark Walmart site dash wide search landmark search edit as autocomplete opens list search Walmart.
Okay, so it's site-wide watch. So here I've moved into what's called keyboard mode. You saw it change the code. That just means now that my keyboard, instead of instructing the screen reader what to do, it's now going to interact with the actual page. So that's something that I'm using NVDA, and that's something NVDA also JAWS works the kind of that way. Not every screen reader works that same way. So I am going to write down in here, I want a Bluetooth keyboard. Now, I heard it say something, so it means that there's probably had results, but I'm just going to type in Bluetooth keyboard. And I'm used to often search fields work by just pressing enter, and I'm going to do that and see what
19 search suggestions available below. Walmart bar save money.
Okay, so it tells me there's 19 search results below. So that's something it read out to the screen reader.
Bluetooth keyboard dash walmart.com dash Google Chrome.
And it says the title's now Bluetooth keyboard, which that's nice. And I'm going to go back into screen reader mode.
Link skip to main content.
Okay, I'm at the top of the page. I'm going to hit the H key because hopefully that will take me to the search results.
Main landmark results for quote Bluetooth keyboard quote left parent 293 right parent heading level 2.
Okay, there it goes. It takes me to that. 293, I guess, is the number of results. I'm guessing that's what that 293 means.
Uses external data dot. Price when purchased online.
Okay.
Button legal information.
So here's some things about prices and legal information.
Link Zag dash messenger folio 2 dash tablet keyboard and case for 10.2 dash inch iPad comma 10.5 dash inch iPad slash air free.
So there's one.
Button sign in to add to favorites list comma Zag dash messenger folio 2 dash tablet keyboard and case for button iPad comma 10.5 dash inch iPad slash air free.
Okay.
So
Zag
Tim,
messenger.
I'll ask you one question about what we're seeing, and then I'll key up Stephanie's comment too. So I noticed on the little speech viewer,
Yeah.
it's saying things to you like, it's saying what's on the screen, but it's also saying things like button and link and graphic. Why is that important to you? That's not
So
something I
those are,
necessarily see on
again,
the
it's
screen.
identifying the object. So for instance,
Results for quote Bluetooth keyboard quote left parent 293 right parent heading level 2.
it says that heading level 2, right? Now,
Right.
notice that it says Bluetooth keyboard, and then it says, I think that number is the search results. That's what my guess, that's what my assumption is with reading this. So it tells me that, but if it just told me that, that really wouldn't necessarily mean a lot to me. But telling me it's also a heading tells me, okay, this is labeling that section of the page. So my assumption is that what I'm going to find after this is those search results about Bluetooth. So it's frequently useful for me to know things like if something's a link or a button. If I know it's a link or a button, I know I can interact with it. So for instance here,
uses external data dot. Price when purchased online.
so there it just said uses external, right? It did give me that notification here. It just said that it has nothing else about it, just text, the text you see. So that tells me that's just text. I can't interact with it. It's that there's no meaning beyond what I read there. Now, if I go down one more,
button legal information.
It says button legal information. Well, that tells me I've got a button here, and if I press it, it should reveal legal information, something that's special about whatever legal information they want me to know. So again, if it just said legal information, I wouldn't know it's a button. And I'd say, okay, legal information. What is it, this legal information? It's just text. I don't know if I can do anything with it or if it means anything, but because it's now telling me it's a button, I know that I can click on this. And likely what's going to happen is I'm going to get whatever additional legal information they want to provide me.
So going back to what I was talking earlier about perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, this is really giving you that perceivable and operable thing, right? Where you can't see the button, you can hear the button, and then you now can understand what you can do next, right? So it's really helping you figure out the page and the structure of the page too.
In many ways, the perceivable, operable, and understandable and
Yeah.
robust all are in play in this button here.
Uses external button legal information.
Because you hear that? So the perceivable is that if it wasn't constructed the way it was, I would hear nothing, right? I can't see the page, which is the primary people way. So I'm hearing it, which is part of what the screen reader does. And that's part of robust as well, because the screen reader is able to integrate with it. The screen reader is telling me that this is a button that says legal information. That's part of, now I can perceive that there's a button there that says legal information. The operable that, well, the operable, we don't know, right? Because one of the things was, can I interact with it? Well, one of the things I can do here is I can press enter on it and see if something's going to happen. Understandable, because it has a label that says legal information, right? I know what that button should be able to do. I should understand what that does. Again, the robust part is the screen reader reading this. Now let's see, let's go ahead and press enter on that button.
Pricing and item information colon. Dialog. Close dialog button. Pricing and item information colon. Button close dialog. Heading level 2 pricing and item information colon. Item information colon. We aim to show you accurate product information. Dot. Search results are based on data provided by manufacturers, comma, suppliers, comma, sellers, comma, service providers, comma, and others, comma, and we have not verified the accuracy of this information. Dot. Product packaging and material may contain more and slash or different information. Dot. Always read labels, comma, warnings, comma, directions and other information provided with the product before using or consuming the product. Dot. For additional information about the product, comma, please contact the manufacturer. Dot. Pricing information colon. Prices, comma, terms, comma, and availability may vary online, comma, in stores, comma, and in dash app. Dot. Items ordered online may be available for pickup at store, comma, shipping, comma, or delivery. Dot. Some items may be available from marketplace sellers, comma.
Okay, I'm going to hit the control key, which tells the screen reader, please stop talking. So what happened is a dialogue popped up. You heard it said it was a dialogue, identified that. So again, I now know what I'm in. So that gives me some information that if it hadn't said that, I wouldn't know if I'm just on a different part of the page or what was going on. So I know it's a dialogue. It started, one thing is the screen reader will read through, often when it starts reading, it'll read through the whole page if the page first pops up. I usually hit the control key because that's not what I wanted to do. In this case, I let it go on a little bit so I get an idea what's in this dialogue. I can continue reading the dialogue because I can move through the dialogue.
Items sold online by Walmart may be eligible for link price match policy.
So I can do that.
Link price match policy. Link price match policy.
So there at the bottom is the link price. So I can go back to the top of the dialogue.
Button close dialogue.
And there's a button for closing the dialogue that I can enter. So basically, when I did click that button, it was operable because I was able to interact with it. Now, of course, I'm using a keyboard. Someone might be using voice. There are a number of different methods. Most methods for assistive technology emulate what a keyboard does. So that's usually a good test of that. But now I can, so now, okay, that's good.
Button close dialog.
Now I'm going to close this. Let's see what happens, because this could be important.
Banner landmark link Walmart comic. Main landmark legal information. Uses external data. Button legal information.
Okay, it put me back at that button where I was at, which
Yep.
is good. So I didn't get thrown off somewhere else on the page.
So Stephanie, that what you're doing, what you walked us through to, Stephanie asks, is there any way to preview a site to evaluate if it's accessible? Because you've got a lot of things going on here, but what if I don't know how to use a screen reader? Is there other things I can do to say, is this going to work, or are you just going to get frustrated with it?
Well, so if you're really new to accessibility, one thing you can do is there are automated accessibility checkers out there, and you could always use those. They are often a good way to start your journey. If you don't know anything about accessibility, start out with automated checking. They aren't going to check everything. They just check what items can be automated. So that's one thing to always remember. Automated checkers don't check all the accessibility issues. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Sometimes they catch critical issues. There are other critical issues or important issues that they're not going to catch. So just realize that when you're doing an automated checker, it just checks some of the things for accessibility, not everything. And so that's a good way to start if you're new to it. And there's a bunch of them out there. I mean, DQ, WebAIM, TPGI. There's a bunch of different automated.
Yeah, and I just
within Chrome, there's Lighthouse, there's Microsoft Insight. So there's a bunch of tools that you can use if you're like, I don't know anything about accessibility, but I really would like to get started and at least find and see if there's anything needs immediate attention.
There's three of them I put in the chat: Microsoft Insights, DQ's Axe Dev Tools, and WebAIM Wave. WAVE. If you type that in your search box, it will take you to those pages. Just a note, all three of them to begin with are free. I think DevTools has a paid version as well. I'm not sure about Wave, but that's the great thing is the price of entry is free if you want to play around with them and see what they're gonna what they do. So,
and in Chrome, there's also Lighthouse, which does some accessibility checking, and TPGI has something called ARC. And I think there's a free version of that. There's a lot of free, and so they can get you started, right? So you can run that on a page and quickly find some issues. Again, things you can fix that would definitely improve accessibility. Now, it's not the It's not the end all be all that's going to fix all the issues. But, you know, if you're like, today, I really want to get started and get some things improving, then that's a good, really quick way to provide that information, so you can get started. Some other things you can do, right, is test with the keyboard. Go through their interface, go through it, and just use a keyboard to navigate through the interface and so you can interact with that. The fact is, if you can do that, if your interface is fully accessible with keyboard, then honestly, it's going to work for people using a screen reader, or it's going to work for people who are using other types of like a switch device or things like that to interact with the site. So that's another way when you get into manual checking that you can get in. And there's other additional things you can do, but they take a little more knowledge. Those are probably the easiest ones to learn off the top. Color contrast. There's a bunch of open source color contrast checkers too. So you can go around and use your mouse pointer and point to different text on the screen to see if the color contrast is correct. Those are probably the three easiest things you could do with very little to no knowledge about accessibility, and get some feedback on how well your site works.
And I put those keys in for keyboard there. Daniel does ask a question about how do you go about programming and determining the screen reader settings? Do you find the screen reader's program to be accessible? I know you were walking it through earlier with the settings. Daniel, if you want to, at the end of the presentation, there is my email address. If you want to send me an email and just talk to me about what screen reader you're using, we have some settings that we suggest for testing. Now, of course, if you're using it like Tim on an individual basis, he has settings that he likes. Any program, right? You get program settings that you like, that you use. Example, if I would turn on my screen reader, you'd find out my screen reader does not have a robotic voice. It has a natural sounding voice. You start getting those preferences that uh, you get comfortable with. And then Stephanie, I'll answer this question for you real quick. Can you tell us about what's a good versus bad alt tag? I'll give my opinion. I think Tim would echo it. A bad alt tag is an image with no alt tag. A good alt tag is an image that at least has a description on it. Because the fact is, I think sometimes people get so caught up in, I need perfect alternative text for somebody with a screen reader. There is no such thing as perfect alternative text. It's, how would I describe the image to someone like a friend, right? Tim taught me this trick. Pretend like you pick up your mobile phone and like I'll even do it right now. That second image that Tim has on his screen of that Bluetooth keyboard, what would good alt text sound like for that image? Well, I call Tim up and say, "Hey, Tim, you need to go out to Walmart." He goes, "Why?" I go, "There's this great keyboard. It's aluminum, right? It's a keyboard and it's made out of aluminum, so it's got a gray color to it, and the keys are white. And it looks like it's just a touch keyboard versus a mechanical keyboard. And those kind of descriptions is what Tim's looking for, because it gives him some kind of idea what he might be looking at, right, Tim?
Well, and here's the thing. So Mike is right. One thing is, often when you're doing alt text, there's a concern that you're not doing it good enough, right? And realize that when it comes to what's the correct alt text for a particular image, there are lots of answers that would be good answers. There are some answers that would be bad answers. Usually bad answers are like no alt text, or something that just says image, or right. But here's the real key to alt text. You want to know, why is it I put the image on that page? What was I wanting to communicate to the people using the page? And that's what you want to use as your alt text. Now, people often ask me, what would you prefer as alt text, Tim? And the thing is, well, the fact is, I know anytime someone puts an image on a page, they have something they're trying to communicate. Now, maybe it might be decorative and it has no impact on the understanding of the content. It just looks nice. Maybe they're trying to set up an intent, something like on a site like REI, where they have things that they're trying to communicate, this is the nature of our company or site. And so there's stuff like that. There's things like here that are products, right? Where they're just saying here, oh, here's an image of the product. So you have to look at it and say, what am I wanting to communicate? What did I want to communicate? And that's what you want to include in alt text. Now, the other thing that's important with alt text is if what you want to communicate in the alt text is already on the page, then you don't need to communicate that, right? So for instance, with these images here, I might just put the name of the product as that, not necessarily a description that says it's, white keys, and I may not necessarily describe all those details because those details are probably all part of the description of the details of that information. And really on this part of the page, I'm mostly just looking for keyboards, information that will let me decide the keyboards. So again, you have to look at that. You have to look at why was that image there and what is it why I wanted to communicate to the user. Again, like for instance, at the top, there's probably a Walmart logo, which is a link. It's like, well, that's a link. It's an image and a link. Well, what was I trying to communicate there? Well, I'm really trying to communicate that takes you to the home page. Okay, well, then for that particular link, image and a link, it's a home page, but maybe on another page, the image is just sitting there by itself. And then you might want to say Walmart or Walmart logo or something like that. Or you may even say Walmart logo and then put a little description of what it looks like, because you feel like that's important that users understand.
All right, so we got 5 minutes left. Tim, maybe you select one of the keyboards real quick. We'll just hear through that, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Button add to cart dash button shipping comma arrive button iPad sponsored button add display current price iPad save with graphic won't pick up today delivery today shipping comma link Anchor Ultra compact slim profile wireless Bluetooth keyboard.
Okay, let's go this one. I think I just did that.
Popular pick blank link skip the main content.
Let's see what happened. Oh, got another page.
Skip the main content link.
I gotta get my key.
Anchor Ultra compact slim profile.
Okay, so I'm on a new page, and that's what the title is.
Blank.
So I'm going to use the H key.
Main landmark Anchor Ultra compact slim profile wireless Bluetooth keyboard for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac heading level 1.
Okay, that's good. It's heading level 1. It tells me it's an Anchor keyboard and tells me for what systems it works.
Left parent 4.2, right parent, right parenthesis 4.2 stars out of 405 reviews.
Okay, so there it told me how many stars it got, how much its rating is, and how many number of ratings it received.
Link 405 reviews.
405 reviews.
Heading level 2 at a glance.
So at a glance, so this so I should tell me something about some quick things I need to know about it.
List with 2 items connection.
So it said list 2 items connection. USB connection.
Out of list with 2 items color.
Color.
White.
Okay. So that
out of list with 2 items OS.
OS.
Mac OS 10.12 Sierra. Out of list with 2 items brand. Anchor.
Out
of list with 2 items number of keys. 78.
78 keys.
Out of list with 2 items wireless.
It's wireless.
Bluetooth.
So that's good. That's what I was looking for.
Out of list button view all specifications.
And then there's for small specifications. So if I want more, I'll go on to the next thing.
Heading level 2 about this item.
So about this item, let's see if it provides any more information.
List with 6 items bullet the Anchor Advantage : join the 50 million plus powered by our leading technology .
Okay.
Bullet works with iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows, with shortcut keys for all 4 systems .
Yeah, shortcut keys for all those systems.
Bullet 30% smaller than traditional clunky keyboards and as light as a billiard ball left parent, 6.7 ounces right parent .
Okay, so I know it's really light, and actually saying it's light as a billiard ball gives me some indication since I know how much that weighs.
Bullet type quietly and effortlessly on comfortable, low dash profile keys .
Row profile keys.
Bullet lasts over 3 months left parent, based on 2 hours used per day right parent, with power dash saving mode and space for 2.
Okay.
AAA batteries left parent, not included right parent .
Needs AAA batteries.
Bullet learn more and shop : www.walmart out of list button collapse view more, item details.
Okay, so what if I want to buy this? So
Walmart advertisement proving Safa from link Samsung gaming monitors blank. Out of proving sponsored.
See here.
How do you want your item question? Heading level 2.
Okay, I hit the H key to see what it would take me to. It says, how do you want your item?
Graphic Walmart Plus. You get 30 days free exclaim. Toggle button not pressed, radio button not checked. You get shipping arrives tomorrow, order within 11 HR 33 min, radio button not checked, shipping arrives tomorrow, order within 11 HR 33 min, toggle button not pressed.
Okay, so it tells me shipping tomorrow. So
Tim, I'll tell Stephanie, this is why I have my camera off. Because to your point, she mentioned that Walmart's webpage stinks. One thing, he would get used to some of these things, but we can see that add to cart button above, right? And this is where I start doing body English about adding it to cart of, hey, you can add it to cart up up at the top, right? Kind of situation. And again, this is back to Tim's earlier point. I could see it. He doesn't know it's there unless he happens to run over it with the screen reader.
Right.
That's
Interact
something
tomorrow order within
important.
11 HR 30 minutes. Toggle button.
All
Press
right, so
live
I'm going
tomorrow.
to take back screen share to you, Tim. We've got 1 minute left, and I want to go ahead and just let the team know. Thank you for your questions. We appreciate all your questions, but among more, thank you. You get a Lily on a tail wag today. She's very happy that all of you spent time with us to learn how to change the world. So believe it or not, she is a very happy dog. Tim will tell you he gets tail wags all the time when we go over to his condo. Here is my email address. It's michael@accessibilityfirstsolutions.com. Daniel, go ahead and send me that configuration. I'll send you that. If there's any other questions you have, don't think it just ended at the end of this presentation. Give me an email. If you got a question for Tim, send it to me. I'll get it forwarded on to Tim as well. We want to thank you for it, your time and attention today, and thank you for your questions. And we'll continue to do things like this. So shoot me a note if you'd be interested in seeing more screen reader demos or anything else that would help you in your accessibility journey. Because one thing I want to say to the team is thanks for being and taking this time to hear today, because it really shows that you want to change the world. And we want to thank you so much for making this an important part of what you do every day. So Tim, any thoughts before we close up today?
Just glad you guys were here today to join, and again, reach out, ask any questions. Excuse me, any questions you might have. We're always willing to answer anything you have. So I mean, mostly we want you to be able to make your things more accessible, or be able to solve your problems and make things more accessible.
Thank you. We'll talk to you hopefully later. Stay in touch.